I really don't understand this shit. What do you mean? God, please help me. God, please help me. That's the shit. God, this is awful. Oh my Raymond. Ah, my God. Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2, 3. The fuck? Testing 1, 2, 3. Yo. Good. The shit, dude. Testing 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. What is going on? I don't really know. Oh my God, that is so painful. Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. My God. Why is it sound horrible? I don't get it. Whatever, dude. On my wall, how I've been. I finally see you. I could be. I will be waiting for you. Even if I dream on. I could not understand. Why is it so weird? That's okay. Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2, 3. I don't really get it. If I do not believe you, I could be the one here. I will understand you. Even if I could be. I will be the one. I am just waiting. Even if I do, I will never stop on it. Even if I could be. Hello everyone. You know what? I don't care anymore. Fuck off, mate. So what is going on? Wait, I haven't checked my master. Kinda awful. What the fuck? How much did I reset it? That is ridiculous. Oh my god, what the fuck? What is going on? Why is it not working, dude? It's gold, right? Shut up. Fuck. What is going on, dude? What the fuck is going on? I really don't get it. I say I don't get it. I will be the one who will understand if I am slightly. How much is I resetted the shit? This is ridiculous. What the fuck? How much did I reset? My god. How much did I reset it? I mean, I remember crossing last time. I mean, it makes sense that it's reset, but how much though? How much did I reset? I don't remember. What day is it? Hey, fucking bitch. What the fuck? Where are you attacking me? Are we not friends? Fuck. And where are they? Where are they? Oh, they're getting it from here. That's alright. Why are you attacking me, dude? Is that, are we not friends? Are we not friends no more? You dude. I could be the one who will understand if I am slowly every part of me to say I could finally understand if I could be for you, even if I am finally when I unfair or something good. How much did I reset it? Don't tell me I don't have like I swear that. What if I don't have any place to okay I have Paul. Okay. What? Let's go to the outside wall. It's east and not it did not fucking what? So I, there's no way that the underwater path that look like stronghold is actually stronghold. That would be weird. That would be weird. That would be weird. You hear me? That would be weird. that would be there. Even if my god, look fucking me. Looking on, not too wrong. I will be starting to understand it if I am. Do I still have style amended? I think I do have style. I could be the one who will understand. Still going east, okay. Come on, please, come on. Hoopla, hoopla, blah, 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 hoopla, hoopla, blah. Okay, where is it now? It is. I'm barely getting anywhere, but whatever. Come on, come on. I swear, if it is the fucking, what is it called? I will be the one. I swear, no, that's not it. I thought it was it, but no. Where is it though? Where is it? I think I remember it being somewhere near here. Is that it? No. I will be the one who will understand. Where is it? I don't see it. Oh, legendary? Cool. I mean, yeah. Shit, there's dying. As well, if this is it, I'm. I still is. But that is not a stronghold. That's good to hear. I think stronghold is fucking so far 1,000, I don't know. 3,000 maybe? I don't really know. Oh my god, the night is getting really cold. So, my god. My god. Yes. I hate it so much. I kid you not. I'm wondering what I'm doing with this. Where is it? Really? Is it break? I think it's break. I think it's break. Oh well. I will be the one who will understand if I could find a way. Why is there a glow switch there? Do not done. Speed dolphin go at you. I will be the one who will understand If I am finally, if I could on a thing. This is so tiring. What is that? What the? Oh, fuck. Oh my god, it's so far away. Wow. Come on, faster. Faster. That's really is. Did it break also? My god. How unlucky. What is that? Just yeah. Why is it so far away? Okay. Thanks, Dolphin. What the fuck? What is happening to my wall, dude? That is a fishing ship, so I don't really care about that. It's kind of painful. What is that? Why am I at? Still is. Okay, it's so far away though. Far away. No way, I swear that if it is 1,000 block away, that I mean 10,000 block away, I'm gonna do unthinkable thing. Let's check. I mean, it's because I don't. Okay, sorry. I'm having a hard time to sleep, but that's a first fall. Okay, I think I'm taking it up. Interesting. I will be the one who will understand if I could finally feel it. Pocket break. What is the lock? What is with the lock? I don't understand. Oof. Chill. I don't have emerald on me. I mean, it would go if I have emerald. I swear that the fuck. I don't understand. I need dolphin to the shit. This is also is do it. My god. How far away is it? It should not be this far away, no? I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be this far away. But I don't get it now. Oh my god, that is so far away. That's so Jesus. Right. I do have that fighter. Jeez Louise. Just swimming, just swimming, just swimming, just swimming. Got it. What did I see? I see nothing. What the fuck? What's that here? Still is. Come on. Come on, dude. What the fuck? I swear if it is really beyond the fucking culture. In did Chunky not? I mean, did I invest Chunky when that's not fucking the culture one? There's no way. There's actually no way. There's actually no way. There's no way, dude. Why is there so much health? I don't understand. That's great. Okay. My god, it is a floating island. The real island is so far away. Oh my god. That actually makes sense. That's so annoying at the same time. How far away, dude? How far away? This should not be this far away, dude. It should not be this far away. I'm crossing the island. And I don't have arrow. What am I doing? What am I doing to that? Oh my god. Come on, make that fall. Oh my god. 5,000, 5,000. Ridiculous. Oh my god. How the hell? Where the hell is this portal, dude? Stronghold? This shit? Where the hell is this stronghold, dude? What? I think I know where this is. It's beyond it. It's beyond it. Beyond, like here, beyond it. They're halfway there. To think that what is that? Okay. This. This is so tiring. But I need to swim anyway. I need to swim. Jesus Christ, this is so boring. What am I doing? My god. My god, dude. What the fuck am I doing? Hello? What? What is happening? Don't tell me. Yes, Louis. Is that a Nautilus? Nautilus? What is it called? I don't know. What is that, dude? Not a legend. What? Why is there a guardian? Bitch. The fuck? Calm down, bitch. What is it? Is this it? Is this Stronghold? Is this the Stronghold? Hello? Oh, I don't think this is Stronghold. Fuck. What is that bitch? Ow. Ow. Not awesome. That's the ruin portal. I see. Ah, it's really tiring. Tiring? I'll get help. Help. That's it. Still? It's unbelievable. I swear if it is on a new download, which is 10,000 block away from 00, that is great. I don't want this to that much. Why am I so? I think it is 10,000. I mean, God, I said it. Oh, I don't think that's it either. Um, Everything's so far away. Jim, my God, what am I? Why is it so far away? No, I don't. Like it doesn't make. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yes, let's be. Let's. Hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Wait, wait. That's it. Still? Oh my God. Distance break. Okay. Now I'm positive. It's fucking. Now I'm positive that it's beyond the chunky tongue now. Beyond. Oh, fuck me. Fuck me. Fuck me. Ah, this is the campus. Boom. Boom. on. I don't understand why I the I don't understand it. Whatever. Like whatever, dude. I don't really know. This is so painful. Whatever. Shut up. Listen, but I'm back at this day. Oh, this is so. God, this is so awful. My God. I just wanted to unspeakable thing. What the fuck do you mean? Like, what the fuck do you mean? Why? Why? I'm so done, dude. The fuck, dude? Hello? Can you not see me? Bitch. This. Yo? Yo, it's not seeing me. Okay, okay. I don't get it, whatever. Dude. Whatever shall I do, dude? This is the worst. Maybe I should disable Foxy for now. I can see it. Great. Whatever. What is that, dude? I see what it is. Oh my God. This is just awful. My shit, dude, the shit. Mm, 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 mm. I will be the one who not understanding you every time that you like. Yes, as well. I'm positive now by this. I am positive by this. Come on, come on. Come on, please. Good. I am positive I did this. Level 48, whatever. Don't down in my way, that is shit. Not another ocean. Where is this? Where is this? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Ah, yeah. Dolphin, dolphin. Oh, dolphin, please. So far away. Fuck. Dolphin, please, please. Wait, can I just... No, I don't. I wanna swim though. That's what I think it is. It's another ruin guardian shit. Fuck you, fuck you. Leave me alone, leave me alone. Guardian, die. It's marine. No. What is that shit? Where is it? I don't get it. Dolphin, I need dolphin. Dolphin, please, please, please. Dolphin. Dolphin, please. I swear, can I make it? Ali? No, I cannot. Ah, where is dolphin? Dolphin, you fucking shit. Oh. Shit. What is this generation that the shit? The fuck going on? What the fuck is going on dude? My god. Level 51, cool. I know where it is, I know where it should not be this far, but I know why. I mean, I don't know why though. Is it because of the mod or is it because chunky? I don't know. I think it's probably because mod, no? I don't know. I'm confused. Anyway. Yes. Yes, Louis. When is landfall the tissue? Oh my god. Oh my god. When this is cold biome. But really though? This is such a massive continent if it is. Such a massive continent, look at that. So big. And wow. Awesome. Oh. It's raining. Fuck you, rain. What is this? Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you mean. Fuck you mean, dog. Chill. Chill, I said. Jesus Christ. Just that all it. No, I did not make it that. I mean, I did make it if I fucking not stupid. If I'm not stupid, but yeah. But jungle dish, okay. It's calcite. I love calcite. Can you make calcite though? Wait, calcite? Can you make it? Right. You can make calcite. That's disappointing. I wish you can make calcite too. Wow. This jungle dude. I'm at this canyon. For real? Oh, I'm at this here? My god. This shit, dude. 1000 more block and then we are out of predicament. As far as if it is, I think it is 1000 10,000 and I mean 17,000. 17,000. Last time I checked, it's 17,000 block. Ah, ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What is this? Well, I made this canyon, I think. Fuck you. That's yellow. Okay. Okay, dude. What the fuck? Oh, where am I? It's so far away, it's so far away. Oh my god, I swear if it is 17,000 block away that I'm gonna do unspeakable thing. That is a threat. It like massive like hoopla, hoopla, hoopla. Hmm. I did not. I did not remember. Yeah, I cannot pass through the puddle. Cool, cool. We're almost there. Let's see that. Fuck, why did I throw to? Instant break. Okay, none of it break. Okay. I think it's 17,000, no? If I'm not wrong. Which is just ridiculous. How? Why? I don't understand. Who? What? Why? How much is beyond belief? Oh, what is this? I'm curious what's over here. Terracotta. Okay, yes. I see. Finally, a new chunk for me to explore. I'm kinda tired. I'm throwing where it is. Look at it, generating stuff. Villager. It is a villager. Get it? Cool. Yes, Louis. Why is this so massive though? What? This continue is so massive. Oh my god. Yeah, it's so massive, the vision. Fuck you. My god. I'm struggling to render. To generate the chunk. Fuck yeah. Warm river? Warm river my ass. One inside right there. But I don't have nothing for me, so I kinda given up the bug. I swear that bug ready. Does it even exist at this point? I don't really know. Now I'm curious if it existed or not. That it. That somehow it doesn't feel like it. What is this? I can make a detour. I'm kinda bored anyway. Open the door. You village. No, it's abandoned. Curious. Nothing exciting. Where? What is this place? That is so funny. I hate that so much. I'm losing my mind. Where is it? Oh my god. Why is it so far away? The shit. What the fuck? Is it bug? Come here. Coral reef though. Coral reef, I think. Dolphin, please. Dolphin, please. Dolphin, come. Yum. Yum. Yo, that is massive. My god. This is not awesome. It's not awesome. I think it is 17,000 block away. That the fuck. That's just a bit more than halfway there, so it's gonna be rough. Or rough. Fuck. This is so rough. Fuck. Who make it this way then? Fuck me, dude. This is rough. Fucking hell. My god. My god. My god, my god, my god. This is actually bullshit. There's actually so much bullshit with this shit. Man. How is this real? How is this real? It's 17,000 block away. It's 17,000 block away, what the fuck? This is not real. My god. Oh my god, my god, my god. My god, my god. Dolphin. Is Dolphin? Dolphin, Dolphin, where are you? Dolphin, where is it? Dolphin, come. Dolphin, what the fuck? Fuck. Okay, blah. Different word, the dolphin. I tried it. Fuck you! I didn't get it. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, that is this on here. My god, dude, this shit. Why is it so far away? My god, my god, my god. I really don't know how am I going to make this a video. Fucking hell, fucking hell. Fucking hell. How long was I walking for, dude? It's been almost 1 hour. This is so much bullshit, actually. My god, my god, my god. My god. Fuck. My god, my god, my god, my god. My god, my god, my god, my god. My god, my god. What is this? Never Thailand? Cool, cool. My god, my god, my god. My god. How far away? This is not real, actually. This is just not real, that shit. What is breaking? I'm not even surprised. I'm not even surprised. Dude. How the fuck am I supposed to do this? Oh my god. shoom, 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 shoom. What is happening? Look at how far we come. My God. God, God, that's up. That is all the. How is this real? How is this for real? Don't get it. What is that shit? Full tower, but what the fuck? That was unreal. But okay. How did I? Oh, this is awful. Oof. This is. But it's Sakura Valley. Valley. Don't know how to speak. Sorry. Uh, it's sleepy time. Jesus Christ. Almost 1 hour. That almost 1 hour. 1 hour of walking. What? I'm positive now. What it is? Please, Jeez Louise, stop this shit. I'm so tired. Oh my God. Is the song not even real at this point? What the fuck? Is it even real? Is it even real? What the shit? Man. Oof. It's so struggling. That's sex. That's sex. Did it break? Did it break? Did it break? It glass, fuck. My bad. I'm greedy. God. Oh my God. 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 This is ridiculous. Ridiculous, I said. This is just bullshit at this point. I mean, oh my shit. God, it's awful. My world, dude. Chill, 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 yo, bitch. Oh my shit. I cannot give up. Like, I can never be. Fuck, what is going on? Please don't fucking regret. That's all I'm asking. Tough. This off if it is regrets, that would be tough. But next time I do this, I'm using the nether root. Fuck this shit up. It's just 2000 block if it's by the nether, which I didn't do, so I swear. Where am I? Where am I doing the shit? If I regress that much, why is this not regressing? I don't remember. Actually, I don't remember that. I mean, it's probably not that much regression. Yeah, it's not that much. I mean, if any, that is. Oof. This is so foreign to me. I cannot, don't like it. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. I know where it is. It's 17,000 blocks away. It's 17,000 blocks. I mean, you know what I mean. That fuck you. Fuck you. Yes. Little village. But what? Dun, 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 dun. It feels like some here, which is annoying. My god. My god, my god, my god. My god, my god, my god. That's a parrot. Yes, there is. It's 1000. I mean, around 2000 blocks away, so that with you. I should have used the nether. This is so painful. I could be the one. know where it is, so I'm chilling right now. Let's check at 16,000 blocks away from spawn. Let's check that. Let's just fuck you. Then speak. Let's check here. Let's check it here. In the ocean. It crosses. Everything cross. What the fuck? Okay, never mind. Nothing crosses. Where is it though? I hit the ender is back. Yeah, finally. Okay, finally. I thought it was crashed. I thought it was crashing. But no, apparently. So where is this? Where is it? Okay. Okay, so it's not 700,000 blocks away, which is nice. It's somewhere here. Maybe here? Okay, not. It's break, whatever. Is it past this river, maybe? I thought my entire shit crossed it, but I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened there. Here, west. Eastern break. Okay, thanks. Thanks for not breaking. Where? Still not here. 15. Where is it? The shoot? Where is it? Unemployed? I think. Still? What the fuck? Where is it? Still? What the fuck? Where is it? The shit? Fuck me, fuck me. Thank God. Fuck, how about this? Okay, that works. Oh, where is it going? No, please, you fucking shithead. Okay. Where is it though? Wait, don't tell me that. Don't tell me it. Don't tell me it realized it. Fuck, please no. Please no, please, don't do this to me. Fuck, I swear. If what I think is going on. Okay, why did I do that? Okay, it breaks. Great. I swear that the fuck. Where is it? It's clearly not here. Fuck, don't tell me. Okay, I think I'm getting close. I mean, it's great, I'm getting close. Oh, it's not what I think it is. Oh, but no. I'm here. I'm here, dog. This shit. I think it is here. Where is it? Okay, it's done. Where is it, dog? This shit. Where is it? Oh, there's no way that is it. Oh, there it is. There it is. Why is it so dark though? Help. I see. Even if I could have been more than you and my heart. No, not this one, dude. Oh my god, I'm stupid. Where is it though? Is it? No, that's not it. What the fuck? I'm confused. No way, it's deeper than deep slate. I think this is it, maybe. There's which indicator? No, that's not it. Zombie. Did it lie to me that is there nothing here? Come on. Did it lie to me that this shit? You fucking piece of shit, where is it? Where is it, dude? This shit. There's nothing. Or maybe this is not. That's pretty. Oh my god. There's nothing, dude. This shit. Where the fuck is it, dude? Fuck. I'm so confused. Is this it? What if this is it? This shit. Oh, that's mine's off. I mean, it should be here, no? Let's see. Let's see what is this. Huh? Where the fuck is this shit, dude? Why is it telling me to go down? I'm so confused. How about now? How about here? It's telling me to go where? Telling me to go up. I'm so confused. I'm beyond confused actually. Nowhere. Fill up. This is fucking. This fucking shit fucking telling me that this shit. Is it like there's nothing here and fucking ditch? Fucking bitch. How about now? Ah? Where is this pointing me at? Jesus Christ, where is this? I should see his commanded, because I'm confused right now. Hmm. Uh, let's go to 4 maybe. This is so painful. What wrong direction? Where is it? That's the shit, but let me get it. Where is it? The shit? Where are you pointing me at? I'm so confused. Dude, I'm cheating. Fuck this shit. Fuck, I ends to wait for so long. Bear with me for fucking minutes. Or forever, maybe? I don't know. I don't get it. What is going on? Fuck, why am I ping? This is ridiculous. Jesus Christ. How about Stronghold? It is here. What is it? 14579 79 79 is 1. And then negative 16. Up. It's here, probably. It should be here, but I don't see anything. It's ridiculous. I don't see anything, dude. The shit. Hello? You block away. It should be here, no? What the fuck? I swear, where is it? Oh, surely it's not up. Surely not. Surely not. It's not up, dude. Where the fuck is it? This is not real. This is not real. Not here, not here. It's down. Probably down. But where? Where down? I will be the one never understand. There's nothing here, what the fuck? There's literally nothing here, I swear. I can't even check with it. There's nothing here, dude, the shit. Did it fail to generate? That's the only conclusion I have right now. Wait, silverfish? Silverfish? It's spider. There's nothing, dude. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing, dude. There's literally nothing. What the fuck? God's calm. What the fuck? Where is it, dude? Is that it? Oh wait, is this it? What the fuck? The fuck are you talking about? Oh wait, this is it. There's no portal anywhere. What the fuck? Where is it? Did it not spawn? Fucking bullshit. This can be it. What's- There's no portal anywhere. What the fuck? There's literally no portal anywhere. You know what, I'm kinda done. I'm kinda done, dude. I'm kinda done. The fuck? Dude? I'm not walking to. Where is it? There's nothing here. Jesus Christ. I'm feeling like I should restart it. That's what the fuck. That's what the fuck. What the fuck, dude? Like, what the fuck? Actually, what the fuck? I'm so done. I'm so done, dude. I'm so done. What the actual fuck? There it is. Lovely. There it is. I don't get it. I don't get if I cheat. Because that is bullshit. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck you mean, dude? This shit? It feels bad to cheat, but whatever. Ah. My god. So awful. Actually, so awful. That shit. What else? What else? What else? My god. How empty is the... How empty that is actually is nothing. Jesus Christ. There's no stronghold in there, dude. What the fuck am I supposed to do? Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Stupid idiot. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Literally what? What am I supposed to do, dude? What am I supposed to do? My god. Please give me a good paw. Please, I'm begging you. Nowhere I will ever leave you. If only it is true. Okay, see? Just 3 more and we are good to go. Please, 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 please. Just give it to me, just give it to me. Give it to me, dog. The shit. Why is the spawner not spawning? That the shit. Can't wait. Like the spawner not spawning. The shit. What kind of bullshit is this? Come on. Come on, please. Why is that they're not spawning? There's one. Please spawn, bitch. Why is it not spawning? Didn't get it. Did I mess up? Why is it not spawning? What the fuck? Where are you, like? Why is it not spawning that? Okay, that's one here. That's missing. Yeah, it's spawned finally. Okay, done. We are done. We are done here. Chill, 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 chill. Chill, chill. Chill. Chill, bitch. I'm scared. Yes. My man. If I could have finally understand today. That's spawner that on. There's nothing here. Nothing here. Where is this spawner that the shit? There's no spawner, so oh it is it. What the fuck? Nihility? What the fuck? Oh, okay. I just need to wait. Just need to wait. Just need to wait. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I can do this every time. Alright, I need arrow. I need arrow. Let me see how far away that is. It's here. Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm not going there. Yeah. I food. Did I not have to have? Yeah. Is this here? Where's the end of the second? This shit. What am I supposed to do? That's not in the second. Why is it so massive? I see now. Crossing it. Only happens to. Oh, that's what. That's what. The altar. What altar do? Like this. This you mean? The altar what? What is the altar? I don't see any altar. But anyway. It's spawned the Ender Dragon. Now I toss it. Oh my god. Cool. What will happen to me with this shit? What is that shit? What is that shit over there? Ooh. Come on, hit. Dude, I suck. I suck. Okay. Let's come over here first. Tum 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 tum. What is this? And postal frame? Huh? What does it do? What does this do to the shit? Fuck you, fuck you. Is there anything else like that? That is the only one, I think. It's an opening like that, so I don't know what that is. I would not on it. What is this? Can't break it. Huh? Hey. Yes. Am I not able to shoot that? Am I too bad at this? Okay, that's good. Am I too bad at? Fuck. I will not sound here. And if it's just nothing. Fuck, 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 fuck. Okay. Oh my god. What is this? Okay, leave me up, leave me up. Fuck. Jump, 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 jump. Jump, 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 jump. Okay. Chill, bitch. Chill, yo. Okay. No, I cannot shoot that. Fuck, I'm stupid. Yo. Yo. Why am I here? 5 more to go. Okay, cool. What the fuck? Why is he here? That's right. If she knocks me over, I'm gonna do something. This wall, this jumping, what is kind of OP? How bad did I miss that? Yo. Okay. One more. Yacha! Finally, it's your time, bitch. Fuck, whatever. Wow. What am I supposed to do? Ew, what is shooting me? Jesus Christ. Chill. Yo. What? Come on, take me down. Die, you dragon. Fuck. Chill, bitch. Chill, what the fuck? Dun. Why is he so fast at the shit? Come on. Come on. Yes. What the fuck? I'm falling. Yes. My god. Oh, he left out of there. Bullshit. Okay, a bit more. Fuck, why can I shoot? Shit, what the fuck is going on? Let's go. Go. No, you kid. You truly kid with the shit. You kidding me? Wait, what am I shooting? The bitch. My god. Come on. Jump, 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 jump. What the fuck? Fuck you, man. Jump, 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 jump. Fuck you. Come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Just do there. Let's push it. No. Dude. That is such a great fall for me. That's a bad fall. Oh. Why do I try to? I cannot have ever seen. Shut up, you bitch. Go away from me. Get away from me, dude. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Fucking piece of shit. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Please make it. Make it. Fuck. Did not make it. I almost died though. Fuck. Wait, I'm dead. Please chill. Please chill. Please chill. My god. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Please. Come on, what the fuck? Go down, bitch. Come on. Come on, die, 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 die. Oh my god. Oh. What is that? Hold on. It's cool. But it's bit armor stuff. How do you do use it? Yes, I'm at the start. Huh? This is. I see. I see. Cool. Cool, I guess. We'll make that. But cool, 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 cool. cool, I guess. Nowhere, really. It could be the one you see. I don't like wings, but I'll take them. I'll take it. And constant break. I think mending is better. But not it. Go. Nhung. The question is, can I? No, not that one. Okay, I can. Cool. I mean, it is Alisa. Whatever. Cool, I guess. I armored it. I mean, I want this stuff. Agility. Diamond and diamond fuck. This will be the death of me. I guess that was cool. Yes, I need to have it on my hotbar. But if I just have it on my hotbar, will that work? Or do I need to hold it? Right. Okay, that's good. How about now? Yes, nothing happening, so yes, it only works if I hold it on my offhand destroy. So that's cool. I mean 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 really cool. Come on, what the fuck? I mean it's the same. It didn't give a fucking light level, but that's whatever. I can see it. I can see. I actually can see. Okay, now I can see better. On. Left. Don't care about you people. I'm just chilling here. Cool. Left. Left. Left again. I still can see. It's so dark. I mean, it's not watchable. But whatever. I don't care. Diamond, finally. So much of that. Amen, let's go. 20. Need more though, I need so much more. Ooh, I guess. Come on. 8. Okay. 58. That's maybe enough, but I want a bit more. Let's see. Fuck, it's burned. Left. I think I'm going home. Fuck, lava. Where is lava? Where is home? Look, home is left. Okay. Wait. Oh my god. Why are you standing here in my mind when you're... What the fuck happened? Diamond. A diamond. Come on. Come on. I totally say I'm not doing. We are near. Diamond. Did I even get a diamond? I always forgot that. Okay, whatever. Okay. Interesting. Please don't glass the shit. I think it's crossing. No. I think it's crossing that. But, yep. Cross. Yes, Luis. Whatever. Whatever. I could never tell it. God, God. My god. Please, 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 please. Be faster, here I see. Be faster, there I be. Even when I don't understand. Interesting. So much flex down. Too much flex down as well. Not understand by me. Only if I could finally. What is called? How does this? How does this look? Oh my god, that's so cool. Is it going though? It is going. My god, my god, my god, my god. My god, my god, my god. Bro. 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 All this is raw. What the fuck? Yes, right. Well, I guess. Yo, what you sell? Softly. Horrible. Me too, I sleep too. I'm kinda tired. So maybe that's it for today. So bye bye. Bye.